we had these best practices of services, and clearly one of them was moving to this one-off purchase of our customer to a land, adopt, expand, renew approach. Land the customer, so maybe that's just the one first subscription. Adopt, wow, does that mean we really need to make them use our solutions? Yeah, because if you don't make them use your solution, then they don't pay the next year, right? Then culture of expanding. Yes, we had this culture already because we were doing upsells, but they were one-off upsells. We were since 10 years probably selling maintenance contracts, which already was one first transformation. But in part of the expand, it was how can I upsell, how can I cross-sell to this customer to actually increase my annual contract value or total contract value, and then the renew. So. To do this land, adopt, expand, renew, you need to know your customers.
Welcome to a new episode of the Product as a Service Champions podcast, aiming to eliminate the sense of being alone when navigating the wild product as a service landscape. I'm your host, Yann Toutant, and today we have the great pleasure of welcoming Pierre-Yves Noel from Alcatel-Lucent Enterprise, who will take us into the world of communications and networking as a service. Thank you, Pierre-Yves, for joining us today. And let's kick things off with a brief introduction of yourself, Pierre-Yves. Could you tell us a bit more about yourself?
Sure, Yann, and thanks for welcoming me in this podcast. So I'm Pierre-Yves Noel. I'm working for Alcatel-Lucent Enterprise for 25 years, a little bit now, and I am in charge of innovation for cloud offers, where we are trying to bring value to our customers. I live in Rennes in Brittany. I'm 48 years old, and I have two very nice girls in my family.
Thank you. And indeed, when we prepared the podcast, we noticed that we have the same roots. I also grew up in Rennes, where you live, so that was interesting to see that as a service also has some some ground in the country where we both grew up. Yeah,
it also happens in Brittany, absolutely everywhere.
Exactly. A place to visit. So yes, we know that Alcatel-Lucent Enterprise has a few as a service offerings around connectivity, application, and even something that you call a business as a service. Let's start by having you explaining us each of those solutions and their benefits, so we can set the scene about your as a service offering.
Yeah, absolutely. So Alcatel-Lucent Enterprise, we are a company that offers network solution and infrastructure to our customers, communication solutions and infrastructure, and cloud solutions as well for communication and collaboration. In those offers, some are native as a service offers, like our platform Rainbow, which offers cloud communications and collaboration. Some are actually offers that were translated from one-time transaction offers, like Purple on Demand, which is the subscription offer for our communication servers, which are installed on premise, but still sold as a service. And we have our network as a service offer for our network infrastructure, which has three elements. One is connectivity as a service. The second one is network applications as a service for all the management and the application around it. And the third one is business as a service, where we want to let's say, specify our solutions for certain vertical markets in the network environment. So this is the overview, let's say, of our different offers, and it ranges, yes, from network to communications, but all of them for connectivity and connecting people and objects.
So with Rainbow, you are converging what you call UCaaS and CPaaS.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
exactly. So
unified
communication as a service, unified communication. I mean, it's the evolution of telephony, let's say, in the digital world. CPaaS may be less known. Communication platform as a service, which brings actually all the resources of the platform into the let's say the mean of SDKs and APIs, so that developers can actually consume the resources resources of the platform in their own application. And I think we'll come back to this because this is clearly for us what offers the openness of communications to the software world. I mean, the famous saying, software is eating the world, and clearly communications are not, let's say, escaping this. But maybe very quickly, I mean, just a very quick history. We are a hardware provider initially, right? Telephony has always been in the part of buildings organization in companies. It's not IT initially, right? It's not information technology. It's part of the infrastructure. And let's say up to early 2000s, it was cables, because you didn't have IP telephony. So it was really TDM, analog, and cabling. I started my career under La Défense, cabling telephones, just to learn. I'm a software engineer, right, at the start. But just to learn things, you have to start there. And then in the 2000s, it started to transform to IP. So if you transform to IP, you start entering the software world, right? And then early 2010s, everything went software, right? So we saw people obviously like Google Meet, Microsoft coming into the market, and clearly adding services on top of the good old telephones. We were also moving to software, but it was more unified communications on premise. So at one point we had to make the decision, right? We need also to move to as a service offers, right? And this is the direction that we took and what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, great. Yes, indeed. I recall myself also this cabling of telephone systems, and then this moment where telephone came into the IT world, and there was discussion between facility managers and IT managers who's going to own the portfolio of communication. There's been a turning point indeed.
You know what, Yann, it's still the case. Last week I was with hospitals, and they are still separated, even though we're this far on in communications as a service. Let's put it this way. There's still these separate organizations, because let's say in companies where telephone is, let's say, very important, it's a must-have. I mean, hospitals, utilities, you name it. There's so many. This is the go-to technology for when everything else is not available, right? You can run, and that's saying from this customer last week, you can run a hospital with telephone, pen, and paper. And that says it all, right? So really, but then it's still there. It's 5 nines availability. That's how we call it, right? 99.999%. And clearly moving to cloud. I mean, there's this move to cloud, from premise to cloud, but maybe not all customers want to move to cloud. And that's why we're also proposing as a service consumption models to people keeping these products on premise, right? So it's the hosting model is not related to the consumption model. It can be different.
Yeah, indeed. Great. One topic, of course, Pierre-Yves, that is important in every discussion we have on this podcast about as a service is, do you build it yourself, or do you use an ecosystem of partners to deliver your services to your customers? So that's my question to you. Have you done it on your own, or do you use an ecosystem of partners?
Let's go a little bit back on where we started. I think that there was, for us, an important step, and that's already 10 years ago. We became an independent company 10 years ago. So Alcatel-Lucent Enterprise was one organization of the bigger Alcatel-Lucent that in 2014 was sold to Nokia. So we became standalone. And this was the time where we needed to ask ourselves, okay, what should we do? What is our future, right? And part of this was really, okay, the world is going software and the world is going subscription, so let's prepare ourselves. And so we created that small team, let's say, which had the objectives of building two things. I mean, the subscription pillars, we called them. But there were two things. One was market capabilities. And in these market capabilities was, okay, do we have the right quote to cash? Do we have the right mindset in our distribution model, which we're 100% indirect? So do we have the right mindset for our salespeople and our channels, which is it's key? And do we have the right offers, right? So those three elements were building the market capabilities. In those, clearly the quote to cash was a question. I've done my career in Alcatel-Lucent Enterprise in services, and I've been in charge of transforming our service offer from a, let's say, a one-off fee to a recurring maintenance offering, right? And the developments that we had to do for this were 1 year long, 18 months long, to be able just to manage recurring maintenance contracts. It was a nightmare, and really I felt that pain in my service career. So I knew that we did not have the right quote to cash to have this flexibility of monetization that is required in as a service models. So in that period, we worked a lot, and in the partnership with Zuora, which was the leader, is still the leader in subscription monetization and invoicing, and we're still working with them. But we really had at that time a partnership in envisaging all our offers and how we could turn them in as a service offer. So building a roadmap, let's say, around our offers to turn products into as a service models, and that's how we started. It was really also a learning curve for us and for the, let's say, organization, and very different organizations, right? From back office to product line management in a way. And Zuora had this experience and helped us let's say, take that curve initially, I would say. That was for the market capabilities requirement. We also had some digital capabilities, as we call them, which was around data. Clearly, when you have your products on premise, you are not connected to them. That was a big problem, obviously. Yeah, so we obviously knew that, but we probably did not realize how much value we were leaving on the pavement, right? Because if you don't have the data of your customers, first, you don't understand them really, especially in an indirect model. It's very difficult to understand adoption, consumption elements.
Of course.
Yeah, so one element was really to go, let's connect our products, let's collect the data. And for this, we used at the time Splunk. I think we changed, but that was one of the leaders at the time. And we really had to also understand, on top of collecting the data, the elements around data security, data privacy. If we collect so much data from our customers, how do we create those elements of security around it? And this really led us as well to all these aspects of sovereignty and being able to to keep that value for our customers of, hey guys, your data is with a French company in France, and that's quite important for them, for customers. And lastly, we also had to learn a lot on the industrialization and operations of cloud, because if you start delivering services from the cloud, that was totally new for us. We had a very good service arm for on-premise installations, on-premise maintenance with our channels also delivering those services, but we had no real experience in operating. Really having the services hosted and having the expected availability, although we had some managed services offerings, but still it was one step beyond. So this is really what we launched at that moment, and just for the record, we named this small entity. I mean, it was a group of persons with the right mindset, service mindset. We named it Outcome Labs, because the end game, let's say, was to think about what do we actually bring to customers and put the customers back at the center of what we were doing, not delivering product features, but delivering services that they would let's say purchase, and that would deliver real outcomes to their business. So the beginning of the verticalization, let's say, of our offering.
It's always, for me, very interesting to understand what has been the sparkle, what has been the first reason to decide to move to as a service. And I think you have explained it very, very, very clear. You mentioned subscription pillars. You mentioned your subscriptions pillars. Could you just deep dive a little bit on this aspect?
Yeah. So we had. Let's say we have looked at all the organization and tried to understand what we needed to change at that moment, right? So in the subscription pillars we had 6, and at the time we were every month reporting to the top management on the progress, right? And the idea was really to try and understand, the impact of change. Just that, right? The impact of change. So for the let's say the marketing pillars, we had for monetization at least, we had to understand, how do we create those new offers? How do we transform a one-off transaction product to a subscription model? We in the service organization, we really were quite close to. Maybe you know about this organization, TSIA, Technology Services Industry Association in North America usually, but very interesting. But we had these best practices of services, and clearly one of them was moving to this one-off purchase of a customer to a land, adopt, expand, renew approach. Land the customer, so maybe that's just the one first subscription. Adopt, wow. Does that mean we really need to make them use our solutions? Yeah, because if you don't make them use your solution, then they don't pay the next year, right? Then culture of expanding. Yes, we had this culture already because we were doing upsells, but they were one-off upsells. We were since 10 years probably selling maintenance contracts, which already was one first transformation. But in part of the expand, it was how can I upsell, how can I cross-sell to this customer to actually increase my annual contract value or total contract value, and then the renew. So to do this land, adopt, expand, renew, you need to know your customer. So linking to the second part of our pillars, data. And so we try to advance with our solutions and link it to learning how to manage data, collect data from on-premise solutions. So this was really the let's say the two pillars: a market, and how do we address that market? How do we compensate sales? We will talk about it. I think that's quite an interesting element: compensate sales and compensate partners, channels, but also how do we advance on this digital perspective? And just to close on this, we had this transformation from on-premise products sold as a one-off, but we also started Rainbow at the same time, right? Which was a digital native, let's say this way, service offering, and which helped us obviously learn a lot faster because having a let's say a free page to create something is a lot easier than changing something that is existing.
I really love what you mentioned. Love, adopt, expand, renew. This is the real journey of as a service, and you see that the different steps that you mentioned are not always taken into consideration into as a service offer, especially renew, because when you come from a linear business model, you are not always thinking about renewing your subscription because it's you're still thinking linear and you're still thinking transaction. And then at the end, it becomes more a payment plan than a real subscription when you treat it still as a linear business model.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a mindset change. It's a mindset change. But at the same time, once you have put this into progress, you start the year with a lot of subscriptions in the bag, right? So
Indeed.
the recurring revenue is a lot more valuable than transactions because you know what you have. And the thing that you have to do is keep your customers, which is normally easier to do than sell any new one-off. But then okay, it's a different mindset. But yeah, indeed, it has positive sides, but the start is or can be painful.
Yeah. And then you have the holy grail indeed of the annual recurring revenue, the famous ARR that is everybody's dream. I have the chance to have a very good marketing team that helps me to prepare the podcast, and I take the opportunity to thank them for that. And they have found an interview you had with Jura that you just mentioned before. In this interview, you mentioned something that really resonates with me. You talked about your aim to build long-lasting relationships with your customer rather than just focusing on a one-time transaction, exactly what we are talking about here.
Mm-hmm.
The question is now that you have been able to land, adopt, and expand, how do you see this evolving over time? How is this relationship with your customer long-lasting versus transactional model? Can you already touch it? Can you measure it?
Yeah, and I think, I mean, let's say that we are indirect in our business model, right? So for us, the relationship is dual. It's relationship with our channels, which we trust, and they trust us for our technology, and clearly it's very important for us to build that channel relationship as well. But also, it means that we were quite far away from customers at the beginning, right? Because in an indirect model, you may not have the commercial relationship, and in an on-premise delivery, you may not have the digital relationship. So how do you cope with that? And interesting fact, we measured the number of people between the user and the developer at the time, like 10 years ago, 14 layers, 14 people between the user and the developer. And that
14.
cannot,
wow.
Yeah, that cannot be, I mean, between, developer and then, maybe management, sales and channel sales, and then purchasing, you see what I mean? So we had to reduce this. One of the mantra that we have is customer at the center. And the more the customer is at the center, the closest you can deliver or define your services to really deliver outcomes for the customers. So one clear thing for us in really let's say building that long-lasting relationship was to reduce that gap. And work more with customers, know them better. So one element was to connect products, and for example, for Rainbow, on which I work more closely, we have a lot more of information. Obviously, it's a cloud native offer, but also it's a cloud native offer that adds value onto existing premise installations because it's connected. So through that way, we can also connect, let's say, the on-premise installations and also know better how they are consumed by the end customers. So that's building the digital element, but also on the sales perspective, I think we have evolved into let's say more let's say direct touch for sales. Let's call it this way. I mean, we call it this way, where we accompany a lot the channels, maybe on mid and large customer more than small, obviously, but we accompany more our channels to actually also build that relationship with the end customers, right? And obviously, the touch points that you have with customers when you have a recurring offer are happening more often, right?
Of course.
Rather than when you sell a one-off transaction, okay, run away, right? You've sold your one-off, you run away, and we may see each other at the end of the maintenance contract, maybe, right? Yeah. So that's
indeed.
That's a bit tough on sales, but yeah, that's sometimes reality. Now with recurring offers, you have a lot more touch points. So you have a lot more opportunities to upsell or cross-sell, and a lot more opportunities to learn from customers, right? And learn, what's not right, what needs to be changed, and so on pricing, on offer, on services, whatever it is. So that's really the change, I think. Multiple touch points and really trying to reduce this gap. I could call it a gap between the developer and the user to actually better know our customers. Again, our strategy is verticalizing. It's to make really offers that are valuable in our customers' vertical and segment. So we are coming from a very horizontal world where we were selling networks and communications exactly the same way to anyone. This has changed, and I think subscription is helping us move that way as well, right? By helping us being closer to customers, and by allowing us to maybe have multiple offers that may be specific to a specific vertical, including the right features, but also including the right monetization, which can be linked to the outcome. And I think that's an interesting point that we may touch as well. Outcome as a service is the
Mhm.
future business models that we want to go, right? So that's maybe touching another point, but I think that's the outcome of a long-lasting relationship, knowing better the outcomes
Mhm.
that your customers expect.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, reducing the distance between developers and customers is key. I fully agree with you. And also the ongoing touch points with the customer when you are into a subscription is something that we notice is key to enhance the relation with the customer, to be in long-lasting relationship, and then to be able to enter into this expand and renew
Absolutely.
connection with the customer. This is one of the main driver that we see for marketeers when they launch as a service, is to have regular touch point between the user and the brand. And I'm going to take an example I love just to illustrate what you said in a B2C environment. But this is a Pret-à-Manger in the UK. Where they have a subscription for coffee, as simple as this. So for £20 per month, you have unlimited coffee in any venue of Pret. And the reason why is just to attract, traffic every day in the shop, and to have a connection with the user, and to be able to enhance the collaboration. So that's very, I would say, narrow, because it's a B2C example. But you can imagine that in a B2B environment where there's a lot of information and exchange of data between the user and the supplier, that is a great way indeed to fine tune the offer almost every month.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Data is key. Data is key. Absolutely.
Data is key. Well, maybe we can talk about data now. That's a perfect segue. It's now the case that a strong driver to implement as a service is IoT, and the fact that every device are now connected to be able to measure consumption and to collect data. Could you give some examples of data that you collect and how you leverage it to enhance your services?
Yeah, sure. So what we offer networking and communication services. So we actually connect everything, and in that sense, I think our positioning is a lot around the ecosystem as well, right? We're more opening and allowing IoT to securely connect to a network and to securely transmit their data, and then our communications offer being, let's say, more and more open. We become the orchestrators between objects and people, because it's interesting for people to actually receive the right information at the right moment from the environment of the organization. So meaning that in that sense, we do collect data from our solutions, and we tend to let's say influence our offers based on the data we collect. But I really believe the offers are a lot more influenced, especially in the verticals and segments we try and target, connecting the ecosystem of the customer together, making sure that we actually add value to the ecosystem by actually being this orchestrator in the middle. And in that way, for us, connecting objects, connecting applications, and connecting people is really the core of what we do. And the direction of our offerings in the segments are made with the local ecosystem. It varies in the countries. I mean, healthcare is not the same in France and Germany, but clearly what we want to do is to create that value in these segments by being that connection between the different elements. And it's not that often that, I mean, I think we're really unique on the market to have network and communications in our offering, and to be able not only to secure the connectivity and transport, but also to include humans, thanks to our UCaaS, CPaaS offerings, and linking that to the on-premise communications, the hybrid element that we have by connecting on-premise and cloud. We can actually create, let's say, value-added services based on enterprise workflows that actually connect people and objects and applications to create those value-added services. So one example, maybe quickly, just so it speaks. For example, in a tunnel in Europe, one of the largest tunnels, we have switches along the way. because you require a lot of network and there is video surveillance, you have all the alarms and everything. Those switches are in specific cabinets because protected. And if it's tampered with, if somebody tries to open it, then we actually can send an SNMP trap, to be technical, to the cloud, which actually creates a dynamic bubble. We call it bubble video conference with people, which receive in an instance the information about, hey, somebody has opened this. Maybe you want to, react. So these people get in the conference, and inside that conference, they have the video feed of the camera, which is overlooking the switch. So in an instance, they have the context, right? And they can actually make their decision based on the best possible context. So in that case, we've connected the IoT, the camera. We've made sure that the camera stream at the right moment reaches the people inside a video conference, and that they can make their decision and switch off the alarm directly from the video conference as well, if they wish to. But at least they can make their decision in that sense. So connecting objects, people, and applications is our direction. That's just a concrete example.
Yeah. Wow, that's an amazing solution you have here to be able to have all the people in a war room instantly and see what's happening. Yeah,
absolutely. And we see that. So we see that in many environments. When you need context and when you need to make a fast decision, that's very valuable because we have the context, we know how to make people join the same environment, and this can be done on any device, a phone, a PC, a mobile. It can be mixing digital and telephony. So that's, I think, the power of our Rainbow platform and our network solutions. Yes.
Yeah, definitely. I can see it. Yeah. Well, Pierre, you mentioned connecting people, and of course, when we talk about people, that directly brings me to the idea of thinking for the next generation. So sustainability as a service is seen more and more as a way to enhance sustainability, thanks to the circularity that is attached to the management of the life cycle of the equipment. I know you integrate environmental and social responsibility into your product as a service model. We talked about it when we prepared this podcast. Could you highlight one of the initiatives that align your business with these values?
Yeah, absolutely. So in this ESG, so we totally subscribe in ESG, and the company is really let's say committed to these results. One of the findings that the team driving the ESG initiative had is that the first energy consumption, or the first impact, let's say, is actually the energy consumption of our products when they are running, right? So obviously we have transport, we have production, but the first one is really usage of our solutions. At least on the network side. Let's take the network side. When you have the switches, they run all the time, and they run all the time, even if they're not used. They run at night, they run on the weekend. So when you start entering into a network as a service offering, you can envisage to better understand the usage and better understand when you may be able to turn off the switch, turn off the Wi-Fi if it's not used. And nights and weekends is 60% of the time. So you see the impacts that you can have. So one of our current projects is really to link usage and power consumption in order to try and reduce this top one impact of our impact of we are multiple hundreds of kilotons equivalent of impact, but if we reduce that top one, we can definitely reduce this impact. Our objectives, just to be clear, in the ESG, and we have a science-based target initiative running in the company, very linked to the Paris Agreement. And by 2030, we want to reduce by 40% our consumption, and by 2050 by 90%, right, our impact. So these are really heavy targets, and this first initiative clearly is one of the main that can have this impact. Obviously, you mentioned it also just as another impact is this circular based, right? Obviously, when you start entering product as a service, repairing, refurbishing can be done in our control, because we deliver a service to the customer. They should not care if what is delivering the service is repaired, refurbished, or delivered from another customer, because the customer changed their service, but it can still serve them. So our target is really to have this circularity at the middle of what we do.
100% with you on this one. It's about delivering an outcome, a performance, and it can be delivered with an equipment that is obviously a new equipment. That's not the point. You're not here to sell specs. You're here to sell an outcome, to offer an outcome to the customer,
Absolutely.
which can be delivered with any type of device.
And it helps us, working on the service side, I've seen as well all the RMAs and all the repairs. We can better manage all this loop of repairing and repairing locally potentially as well. It's not always sending back to another country, or even sometimes too far away. So even on the transport, let's say, of the equipment, there is a big impact potentially.
And back to the energy consumption that you were mentioning before as the first pillar, the fact that you can turn off the switches from a distance is only possible because you know how they are used, you know the way that your customers are using them, and you have the responsibility of having them performing what they are supposed to do. So it can only be possible into as a service that you're able to turn
Absolutely. You need to know how they're used. You need to have the capability inside the switch, obviously, to select the ports that you turn off, right? You know that on switches you have power over Ethernet, which is probably consuming one of the main consumption if you feed the cameras. Cameras are powered by Ethernet, right? So if you do not need the object at the end of the power, then obviously it makes a lot of sense to turn it off. But yeah, you definitely need to be into the customer's business and to have intimacy to be able to understand that. It can be simpler. It can just be offices where then that people are out. You can maybe turn them off, but then you must control the way you turn them on back again when they come back. That's for sure.
Indeed, that's better. Yeah,
absolutely.
Great. We've been looking at the ignition of your offer. We've looked at how it is today. Now, if we look into the future, how do you see the as-a-service models evolving? There are a lot of trends and innovation that will shape the evolution of as-a-service in the coming years. Do you see some in your industry that you can share with us?
Yes. I think I've mentioned that one of our strengths is to be able to manage cloud and on-premise. And we really see one trend being hybrid services that is coming, right? So capability to run services at the edge, and this has a value maybe for reusing existing infrastructure, allowing the customer not to reinvest, but also it has a value from the data perspective, right? Keeping the data local. And that's one of the directions we want to offer to our customers as well, is really to help them secure their data. And if we can deliver a service where data is local and processed locally, but maybe the service then is delivered in multiple locations, that's very interesting. So hybrids, being able to reuse the data and infrastructure that is locally alongside with services delivered from the cloud. And this is really the purpose of why we launched Rainbow as well initially, which is leveraging the communication infrastructure still installed in the customer premises, but adding to this value of mobility. I mean, obviously during COVID, we had a lot of requests from customers which were actually not able to have their employees in the offices, all the telephones sitting there not used, and people at home. So I mean, just like other communication solutions, we had a very high impact there, but having the ability to be at home, but still take the call that is entering on your fixed device is a value, right? Because this offers you mobility, but your customers still call you on your fixed number, wherever you take the call, on your mobile or whatever. So that's this hybrid is a value, and in our program Move to Cloud to Customers, it also offers us the flexibility of on-premise, hybrid, full cloud. Rainbow is also something we can deliver at the edge for customers in their own data center, again, for data privacy. So we have all the delivery models available as a service, and that's really also what makes a difference. Another element that will definitely impact what we do is in the enhancement of the services we want to provide. Obviously AI, because that's really entering everything. If you talk about data, I think in many vertical segments, people start to be overwhelmed by data. There's a lot of data. I mean, you mentioned IoT. We have more and more access to data sources. If I take healthcare, if you want to make a difference for caregivers in their day-to-day job, you just don't send them the data like this. So you need to have the right sources of data, but the right intelligence in the middle to make sure that you find the relevant information for that person at a given time, and that you only send that information to this person in the best possible experience for them, meaning either in their application or in their communication application, but best in their day-to-day application that they're using. So obviously AI will change the value inside our services, and maybe the way also we can let's say move some of the offers from on-premise to cloud as well. That will change. And maybe the last one on trust, last impact, I think it's still young in enterprise, but use of blockchain, I'm sure definitely will change everything.
Wow.
Ledger, but having the blockchain enter the enterprise for data security. I mean, we're very, I mentioned it a lot, but data security is very important for us. We follow all certifications. We have Rainbow certified in French and CCSPN, HDS for healthcare in France as well, or HIPAA in the US. We have a good number of certifications in every country we enter to operate. We want to have the right certifications, the right data, and I believe the next step for this is really blockchain in the enterprise, because that will bring trust between entities. Another element around this is we will work more and more with the ecosystem, meaning exchanging data with various applications in the customer's environment and ecosystem. And for the customer to continue trusting this ecosystem, they will need to have this blockchain layer of trust, I would say, that will help them trust the fact that their data is manipulated by AI here, that is stored in another place, and maybe sent to people in a real-time manner with a platform like we're offering. And clearly, I think customers will need that trust to be able to continue accessing the value that is proposed in these as a service offers.
Yeah, and I see in everything you describe, I see many ways to expand, to be back to what we said before, because those services like AI or blockchain that you mentioned can be added to your core as a service proposition, thanks to an expansion of the monthly fee, an expansion of the subscription, and of course, an expansion of what is the goal, an expansion of the customer experience, that he has a better experience of your technology. So this principle that I like that you mentioned about developments is that once you have a service offer, to add some layers in your as a service offer, to add some layers to it is much more easy than if you were into a transactional business model.
Absolutely. And maybe to bounce on that, what we believe is that our direction in offering as a service in verticals is clearly moving to software. But this value add that we're proposing will actually have to include our infrastructures for network, for comms. So meaning we will upsell our infrastructure because we offer the relevant services in a given segment. right? And if we can include all this in an as a service offering, product plus software, in the right segment for our customers, then I mean, we're selling the overall value chain that we can propose to customers. So the first discussion with customers must be on the value that we are bringing to their employees, their users. Take the nurse in the hospital, take the doctors, take the patient family. What do we bring to these people? And then this, is powered by networks, communications, anything. But the first thing that they care about is, what is the services for the people in my environment? And that's really key to start a conversation with this. And then obviously, to go into the bits and bytes of how it should work.
Indeed. It reminds me of a podcast we have recorded with Kaer about cooling as a service, where in fact, if you manage a shopping mall, you just want a certain level of humidity and temperature in your shopping mall, and you don't care about the infrastructure, the heavy infrastructure that's behind this promise. Here we are saying the same.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally right. Yeah. And that's why it's important to adapt and have the customers at the center to understand their ecosystem, to understand their pain points, and focus what you're doing to actually bring a solution to those pain points. Yes.
Pierre-Yves, of course, we have a time constraint, and we could stay talking about hours, because I think you're passionate about the topic, and it's very nice to have you talking about it. We like to keep it short, this podcast, so we keep our audience motivated to listen to it until the end. So it's almost time to conclude this episode, unfortunately. One last question for you. If you could send a message to your past self, to the Pierre-Yves of 5 years ago, when you first launched your product as a service, what would you tell Pierre-Yves of 2019?
I think one element I found difficult, maybe not difficult, but it's not to be shy on pricing. When you talk to customers, it's always quite easy to validate a feature or to validate a service. But validating a price, is sometimes avoided, because it's maybe part of the nasty conversation, start discussing on price, but you definitely need to validate the value of what you're proposing. People will tell you that, oh yeah, your service is great, but if you don't tell them what they would pay for it, or if they don't tell you that they will be ready to pay for it, then what's the point? So don't be shy on pricing. That's one of the first things you have to put on the table. It has a value, and you need to validate the price as much as the service that you're delivering to the customer, because that's obviously part of the conversation. And I think in my experience that was something I probably tried to avoid unconsciously, and now I'm doing very consciously the validation of pricing. Obviously, there are discussions around it and so on, as usual, but it's very important to include our salespeople in that discussion as well, and to include our partners. But in the end, it's the customer that pays, so they say that the price is right for the service or not, and that's very important to validate. Otherwise, probably having nice talks with no credibility in the end.
Indeed. Yeah, very important. And a value-based pricing is, of course, what I hear between the lines here.
Yes.
The price is based on the value you deliver, and not on the sum of the components that are making the offer.
And that's part of the mantra we had of putting customers at the center as well. The customer is paying in the end. At least you have to find a payer, but the customer, if you have the customer at the center, you can validate those elements, and value for the money. What is what is the value you're bringing for the money the customer will pay, and in this as well, enters the transformation from one-off transaction to subscription. Customers are kind of worried of this transformation as well, so they need to understand really what you are bringing in this recurring model, and why it's valuable to them too.
Indeed. Great. Before we wrap up, if people would like to contact you, where can we find you, Pierre?
So for the company, il-enterprise.com, Alcatel-Lucent Enterprise, and Twitter, and all the accounts of the company. For myself, mostly on LinkedIn, Professionally, I try to minimize my social network activity. It's too consuming. But at least LinkedIn, I'm totally available on LinkedIn. Absolutely.
Okay, great. We'll make sure we share it. So thanks again for sharing your experience with us today. It was really nice to have you on the podcast, Pierre-Yves, and to really enrich the different experiences we collect in a product as a service champion podcast. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Now, to you who are listening, if you need inspiration, guidance, or want to test your ideas before taking action, of course, reach out to Pierre-Yves, but also to myself or to Black Winch. Very often a spoken word achieves more than a written one. So let's connect and make your product as a service champion too, just like we've seen today with Pierre-Yves. Many thanks again for your inspiring story.
Thank you, Yann.